Last year, I spent 9 months in a gaining phase and I gained 10 kilos, but only 3 to 4 kilos of that was muscle, which isn't bad, but that does mean that over half of the weight I did gain was fat. And today I've started my second gaining phase. But this time I'm doing it differently because even though last time it was successful, I made some mistakes along the way. And one of those was that I got impatient and I increased my calories too quickly after a couple of months. And I ended up gaining more fat than I needed to. So in this video today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I've set up this new gaining phase, what I'm changing and why I'm changing it. So if you want to know how to set up a gaining phase to build muscle while trying to minimize fat gain, then this video today is for you. But first, why should you listen to me on this? I'm Lewis, I've been working as a personal trainer and now as an online coach for the past 10 years. I've got a postgraduate certificate in sports nutrition and I've just completed a 9-month gaining phase which I documented all of it. And today I'm going to share with you exactly what I'm going to change this time around. And quickly, before we get into the video, if you're currently not sure whether you should be focusing on a gaining phase, a fat loss phase, or whether you should be trying to recomp, I've created a free quiz. It takes less than 60 seconds to complete and it can be found by clicking in the description or I'll pin it to the top comment of this video as well. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to change this time around is the rate of monthly weight gain. Last year, I aimed to gain 1% of my body weight each month, which at the time was 0.72 kilograms. But after a couple of months, I got impatient and pushed this up to 1.5% of body weight, which meant I was trying to gain slightly just over a kilo each month. But this resulted in me gaining more fat than I needed to across the 9 months. So what I did this time around was I actually spent more time trying to figure out where I sit on the training status continuum. And to do this, I used something called the Fat-Free Mass Index, or FFMI. And when I calculated mine, I came out at 21.5, which puts me just outside the advanced category, which means I should be gaining even slower than last time. So this time around, I'm going to aim for 0.5% of body weight each month, which for me right now is 0.4 kilos, which is kind of ideal because it gives me a weekly target of aiming for 100 grams or 0.1 kilos. Now that sounds tiny, but that's just right for someone who's at my training status. And this is why I always talk about why it's important when in a gaining phase to judge your progress on a monthly basis, not a weekly basis, because the measurement of trying to gain 0.1 kilo on a weekly basis can be quite difficult. Whereas if we're judging it on a monthly basis, the change is going to be much bigger to see, which is why I won't make any changes on a weekly basis, but will do so on a monthly basis when in this gaining phase. And you also might be thinking that is such a small amount of weight to gain, but it's important to remember the more advanced you become in your training status, the slower and harder it's going to be for you to actually build muscle. So that's why we need to approach it slower, especially as a natural lifter, to ensure that we're keeping fat gain minimal as well. So now I know my monthly target rate of weight gain, I now need to work out how many calories I'm going to be aiming for on a daily basis. Now, because I have a pretty accurate idea of what my maintenance calories is, because I've just followed that for the last 7 weeks, I know that in order to gain 0.4 kilos each month, I need to be eating around 130 calories above my maintenance on a daily basis, which puts me at 2,830 calories, which is around 5% above maintenance. And this is where I see a lot of guys go wrong. They start a bulk and immediately jump to 3,500, 4,000 calories, thinking that more food means more muscle, but it doesn't, and it just ends up resulting in a lot of the time gaining a lot of unnecessary fat. So I'm starting at 2,830 calories. However, I do expect that quite quickly I will have to make an increase in this, because you will find in a gaining phase that your body adjusts to the calorie intake quite quickly. And unlike a fat loss phase where you can kind of set a deficit and hold it for quite a few weeks, maybe a few months, in a gaining phase, it ends up being lots of small increases along the way. Okay, now for protein. In previous gaining phases, I set my protein intake at the lower end of the range, which is usually around 1.6 to 1.7 grams per kilo in body weight of protein. Because when you are in a surplus, you don't need as much protein as you would do in a deficit. And while that's still broadly true, over the past couple of years, there's been more and more research coming out showing that higher protein intakes do have positive returns on building more muscle, even when in a surplus. So this time around, I'm going to be aiming for 2.35 grams per kilo in body weight of protein on a daily basis, which sets my target at 175 grams. However, my minimum for any day will be 130 grams, which is 1.7 grams per kilo in body weight of protein. So on the dinners where I might be having meals out, or for whatever reason my nutritional choices are in my control as much, then I'll be making sure that I don't go below 1.7 grams per kilo in body weight of protein, but on most days I will be aiming up to 2.35 grams per kilo in body weight. Now, before we get to carbs and fats, I'm going to go through a micronutrient that I think is really, really important, no matter whether you're in a fat loss, a maintenance, or a gaining phase, and that's fiber. Now, the reason for that is because it's very easy, especially when in a gaining phase, to just fill up those extra calories with chocolate, ice cream, and quote unquote less nutritious foods. And I'm not saying that you can't ever have these foods, but it's important that we're still aiming for a high quality diet. And aiming for a high fiber intake will try and help with making sure that we're having a good quality diet, because foods that are typically high in fiber is your fruits, your veggies, your nuts, your seeds, your whole grains. So I'm going to be aiming for 14 grams of fiber for every 1,000 calories I eat. So for me at the moment, I'll be aiming for a minimum of 28 grams of fiber, but the likelihood is I will go well above that on a day-to-day basis. And from those 28 grams, I'll be making sure that I'm getting at least 3 servings of fruit and veggies. And while fiber might not play a massive role in terms of body composition, if you look at the long-term health studies, diets associated with a high fiber intake have a lot of positive health outcomes. So I think it's a really, really essential part of someone's diet that's often neglected. Okay, onto carbs and fats. I've set fat at the lower end of what I would recommend for a gaining phase, which is around 20% of my total daily calories, and it's putting me at around 50 grams. Now, I haven't done that because fat makes you fat or anything like that, because we know that's nonsense, but because I tend to respond really well to higher carbohydrate diets. So I would much prefer and find it a lot easier to make up the bulk of my diet from my carbohydrates as opposed to fats when I'm setting my carb and fat ranges. So the remaining calories after protein and fat will come from carbohydrates, and that puts me at around 425 grams of carbs. But like when dieting, I will actually flip-flop between my carbs and fats. So as long as I'm hitting my calorie target, my protein target, my fiber target, I'll actually flip-flop between carbs and fats. But most days I will be aiming for that 425 carbs and around the 50 grams of fat. However, on days where I'm eating out or being a bit more social, then I'll flip-flop between the two. Okay, on to supplements. So my supplement stack is really simple. Whey protein powder if I've not hit my protein target for the day, 5 grams of creatine monohydrate every single day, and that's it. Each year I do regular blood testing to determine if I need to actually supplement my diet with anything else. And my last set of results suggested I need to get a little bit more vitamin D. However, I've been spending more time outdoors, doing more walks, so hopefully when I get my next blood test to determine whether this has improved, I won't need to take any others. But if it hasn't, that's when I might incorporate a vitamin D supplement into my diet. And if you are not taking creatine monohydrate and you are lifting weights, it is one of the most researched supplements out there and cost effective. You should be taking this whether you're cutting, bulking, maintaining, if you are lifting weights. Okay, so the non-training related stuff, I will be training 4 days per week following 4 full body sessions. I'll be applying progressive overload, and if I was to cover the training side of things, that's going to need its separate own video. So if you do want to see my training setup, then comment below and let me know, and then maybe I will create a video around this. Sleep, I will be aiming for 7 hours as a minimum each night. And steps, this isn't a magical number. I have just always aimed for 10,000 steps as my weekly average. And I'm not aiming for this to try and manage my weight, it's more the long-term health outcomes. And again, there's a lot of research conflicting against this. Some people say it's 8,000, some people say it's 12,000, whatever it is. For me, I just like to aim for 10,000 steps for my weekly average, especially now working as an online coach where I'm spending a lot of my day sat down working at my laptop. I'm more concerned about the long-term health outcomes and would rather be more active than less. Mini cuts, okay, so quick note on mini cuts. I won't be doing one at least for the first 4 months. And I only recommend that you spend at least 4 months gaining to 1 month cutting if you are going to do one, because you need to give yourself long enough in a surplus to have actually built some muscle in the first place. However, if you're having to take constant, frequent mini cuts, then I'd maybe question the rate at which you're gaining your weight or whether you were lean enough in the first place. So if I do decide to do a mini cut, I'll create it into a video and explain exactly what I'm going to do. And if you are finding this useful, make sure you follow me on Instagram, where I post daily content about building muscle as a natural lifter. Link is in the description below. So to summarize, here's my complete gaining phase setup. My monthly weight gain target is going to be 0.4 kilos, and I'm going to be looking to gain 0.5% of my body weight on a monthly basis. Calories are set at 2,830, which is 5% above my maintenance. Protein, I'm going to aim for 2.35 grams per kilo in body weight, which is 175 grams. Fibre is set at 28 grams, and I'm going to be making sure I'm getting at least 3 servings of fruit and vegetables per day. Carbohydrates and fats, I'm going to flip-flop between the two, but I'm going to go no lower than 20% of my total daily calories for fat, which is around 50 grams. Supplements, I'm going to take a whey protein if I need it and creatine monohydrate. Training 4 days per week, 4 full body training sessions following progressive overload. Sleep, I will be getting 7 hours each night as a minimum. Steps, I'll be aiming for my weekly average of 10,000. And mini cuts, I may do once I get past month 4, but I'm hoping not to have to take many of these. And I'll be posting weekly updates on my gaining phase, so make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can be regularly updated if you want to follow along. And finally, remember, if you've watched this video and you're still not sure whether you should be focusing on a fat loss, a recomp, or a gaining phase, then make sure you take the free quiz that's in the description below this video or the pinned comment. It tells you which one you should be focusing on in less than 60 seconds. And if you liked that video, please guys, make sure you subscribe.